Hi, my name's Sarah Southey, and I'm here today talking with a few peers about online safety. So I'd like to introduce my colleagues today, who are Nicole Lisi, a master's in social work student, and Katie Sadej, and she is a self-advocate who has some really great context and experiences around her journey with online safety, some great do's and don'ts, and some really good information on what adolescents are into these days online to give some perspectives to parents and caregivers who are with us today. So Nicole's going to tell us a little bit about the main question and why we're all here.
Okay, so in young people's everyday lives, interactive platforms have the capacity to increase engagement with peers and provide many benefits for social development, the representation of the self, the exchange of information, and the establishment of relationships and values. Within both formal and informal education contexts, these communicative spaces have the potential to influence and enrich intellectual development. However, an ongoing challenge is finding ways to support young people to engage in safe and productive ways within the context of the internet. So today's question is, what are the issues and how can you create boundaries?
Great. Thanks, Nicole. So the way that we're actually going to be breaking down this important topic is we're going to talk about why cyber safety is important. And we're going to talk about some safety parameters for families. We're going to talk about how to troubleshoot through common online issues. So some questions to ask your teen or adolescent. We're going to get a little bit into contracting, and we're going to go even more into contracting in the second workshop in this series. But that's an important component that we will dig into a little bit today. We're also going to make sure that everyone knows their rights. So just in terms of safety and protection, how to be protected online. And we're going to talk about some social media norms. That's where Katie's going to give us a lot of insight. And we're going to go through some real life examples, popular platforms, those sorts of things, so that we are all speaking the same language when we're digging into this important topic of online safety. It can be really intimidating if we don't know what our teens are maybe doing online or what these mediums and platforms actually look like. So we're going to talk a lot about what to expect in that regard.
There are a multitude of reasons why online safety is important for adolescents specifically. There are many concerns raised about online sociality, identity formation, and relationship building, and then also potential exposure to risky material and online aggression. Whenever someone is online, they're at risk for unsuitable or inappropriate content, bullying and harassment, unwanted contact, revealing personal information and data, and then also viruses, spyware, and phishing scams. The internet often masks signals of positive or negative intentions, so it's more difficult to tell whether a person you meet online is being honest with the information they share or are pure in their intentions. It's imperative that adolescents know what steps to take to protect themselves to avoid these situations, and also how to handle these situations if they do arise. Just generally as a whole, knowing how to be safe online will help protect your adolescent from contact, content, and conduct risks.
Okay, so in digging into the social media platforms, Katie, this is your part of the presentation, right? These are some of the forums that you use. So can you tell us a little bit about them?
The first one I'm doing will be Yubo. Yubo is like a live streaming app where you can join anyone's live, and anyone can go into your live. It's also a risky app to use. So Snapchat is sending photos and videos back and forth in chats and post things on your stories. You can post things on your story, and you can be public. It can be public or private on privacy settings. You can also use Instagram. Instagram, you can chat, go live. You can also post pictures and videos for the people to like and comment on. People could follow each other. And basically, Twitch Live is you can watch live streamers playing games. You can also chat with other viewers.
Thanks so much, Katie. So you'll notice on the chart that we prepared here, so we have some of the riskier activities listed at the higher end of the arrow, and then at the lower end, there are some of the ones that are typically less risky. And this isn't based on any evidence necessarily. This is based on conversation with different adolescents and also some great input from Katie. And we find that it's really, really important when you're thinking about online for your teen or adolescent to be thinking about what the platforms are and how people communicate within those platforms. So you'll notice that Katie mentioned that on U-Boat, it's live. So it means that people are all online at the same time talking, and you can jump in and out of different conversations. Is that right, Katie?
Yes, you can. So what you can do is you can either decide to stay in, or you could, there's like a little raise hand button. You can also say, can I join the stream kind of thing. But that's a more riskier thing because people could either make fun of you or they could do other bad stuff. There's this thing called a moderation alert, where if someone was doing something inappropriate or they had weapons out, then they'll give a moderation alert out to the people.
Right. So that's a good safety protocol for sure. When we've been talking, Katie, I think we agreed that when things are live, when it's like live talking, that sometimes that's a riskier type of activity, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because more impulsive things can happen in the moment, particularly for adolescents who relate to autism. It's really easy to get caught up in impulse in the moment. And we know that so many people right now are stuck at home and haven't seen many of their friends for a year at this point in time. So it can be really, really hard and really easy to turn online to friends, but not everybody online is safe and appropriate. Safe. Exactly. There was one other resource that we had agreed to try to share, but I don't know the name of it. Both you and Kate.
Omegle. So Omegle is like where you can go also live, but there's also people that are doing either inappropriate things or like just doing random stuff. But I'm going to suggest it's not a good thing to use because it's really inappropriate.
Okay. Thank you for that insight. The other thing that I think is important to mention too is that sometimes different platforms will be for making friends or talking to friends you already know. Other times they're meant for dating as well. So it's important to know the context of the platform that you're on too.
I have one point of view, Bill, real quick.
Sure.
So it used to be called Yellow, and then it was called Yubo. But some people call it the Snapchat dating app, basically. Right.
Yeah. So again, like I'm thinking about what apps you're on. That's great if you're thinking about dating and you're on dating apps. But if you're looking to make friends, sometimes that may be confusing to then be on a dating app. That might be confusing for the people that you're interacting with as to what your intentions might be. And now we're going to talk a little bit about safety measures. Individuals will adapt with their families all different kinds of measures that feel safe and comfortable for them. It really depends on their personal family situation, also the individual's ability to communicate online. Also, it's important to think about impulse control and how that person interacts when they're put on the spot. There's a lot of opportunity for peer pressure online, so that can be a really difficult thing if impulse is an issue for an individual. The other safety measures, when you're thinking about all those things, include talking about and agreeing upon sites that are safe. So I know that many parents I work with are sometimes very intimidated about having these conversations with their adolescents because they don't always know what all the apps are. So that's why that last slide, thank you, Katie, was so wonderfully helpful and important and insightful in sharing what these apps actually do and what they mean. I know that that many parents that I work with are super intimidated by these apps. And I know a lot of the parents that I work with are using Facebook, and that's great, but that's not the most common app that is used for teens these days, right? So it's really important to have, for parents to be empowered with what the actual sites are and talk to your teens and ask questions about what are these sites all about? What do people do on them? How do you communicate on them? Another thing that a lot of families agree to in advance is an amount of time that they are agreeing to around how long they may be able to be online for. So visual timers, particularly in supporting individuals with autism, is really, really helpful to use. So it might be some kind of visual timer on the screen, or an actual visual timer clock somewhere, or even a timer on one's phone. But that's really helpful. I know, Katie, that you've had some experience with having timed access with the Wi-Fi. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I had an app called Screen Time. Screen Time is like where a parent can like access their phone and they can shut down the child's phone, preventing them from going on the internet, basically. But I didn't like it in my perspective, but it's what it is, it's what it is.
Right, right. So you didn't like having your time limited, but at the same time, maybe at that moment in your life, it was good to have the time limited a little bit, right? You're saying it is what it is. It kind of was necessary for that time to just to ensure extra safety, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there are different timing apps, and sometimes that can be really helpful, particularly for autistic youth, because we know that it's really easy to hyper focus on certain areas of interest. So if I love a certain app or I love a certain game that I'm using on Twitch with my friends, then it might be really hard. It might be harder for that person on the spectrum to then like shift back to homework or other activities. So timers are really, really often used, and sometimes they're not easy to agree to, but sometimes can be very, very helpful to make sure that balance in other areas of life are maintained.
Yeah.
And then another part of this slide is agreement to be online in a shared space. So in some circumstances, this is necessary. In other circumstances, this is not necessary. All of these are, individual to your own circumstances, of course. But for some people, it's more helpful for them when they're trying to use a website maybe that they haven't used before, or if they've had some trouble online before, perhaps online bullying, perhaps just inappropriate sharing, those sorts of things. Sometimes what families will do is agree that, okay, you can be on this website, but I want you to do it in the kitchen or in the dining room. I want you to bring your laptop there if you have access to a tablet or a laptop, something that can move from room to room. You can use that. You can use that app, but you need to use it in this space only. So sometimes that's part of what parents and families will plan is physical space to be used, or go ahead and be in your room on the computer, but I want you to keep your door open so that if there's an issue, then I can tap in pretty quickly to help you with that. So again, that's not necessary for everybody, and privacy is also really, really important. We want to respect each person's individuality and their own needs and their space. For some circumstances, that's a measure that's helpful. For others, it may not be. Then we have online contracts as well. So this is something that, like I mentioned before, we're going to really dig into a lot in our second session of this series. So if you've got another half hour, a few weeks down the road, I think we've got the date that we'll plug at the end of the presentation for when exactly that is. But we're going to go through and walk through that. And Katie's joining us, and Nicole as well in the next session. And we'll talk through a specific contract that Katie used. Then another component is agreed upon monitoring apps. So again, Katie, you mentioned, what was the one that your family used? What did you call it, the screen time one?
Screen time labs.
Okay, so that's the one that you used. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk about some other common apps that are helpful to use as well. But if you're going to be using monitoring apps, what we're suggesting as good practice would be to make sure that your teen knows that you are using those apps. Just having that discussion in advance, because certainly if you don't talk about those kinds of things in advance, it might make the relationship a little bit strained or stressed, because then your teen might feel like you're maybe not being completely honest with them or trusting them. So certainly it's good to have those conversations up front, talk about why you're installing that app or tracking, and exactly what kind of information will be tracked or monitored. And then a really, really important part, and this is the only one that I'm going to say is actually important for everybody, regardless of your situation, is a plan including how to get help if needed. So we know that things can escalate pretty quickly online, and we want to make sure that everybody has a plan. So we're going to talk about safety and what those resources could look like. But having a person that someone can talk to right away, regardless of what happened online, just having a family or friend to talk to right away, and then also some other resources and information on how to get help as well. some online safety apps. So I've got a handful of links here on this slide that I think this information is all available after the presentation. So I would certainly recommend looking through them. These are ones that were recommended to me by a dad that I know who's in IT, and he is a dad to 3 adolescent youth, and he's used all of them at different points in time. And his background is actually in security and web systems and that sort of thing. So I really liked, and I looked through them all, and I really liked the variety of them. What's really important when you're deciding on an online safety app is that you are making sure that you are able to have the system work. So if you're using a Windows-based platform and then you're using a Mac, then that's kind of going to sometimes cause a disconnect. So some of these you're going to have to look through and see what's compatible with the type of software that we're using in our household. And some of them do have fees associated with them, right? So also thinking about, is this something that could be part of my budget or not? There are other alternatives to monitoring safety apps. Like I mentioned before, having someone in a different room in the household, so you've got some background that way, can be another way to kind of monitor, but this might be helpful. And sometimes you can do things like monitor keywords. So if keywords are coming up, that can kind of cause an alert. Other times the different softwares can track all the activity that's online. But again, I also want to remind parents and caregivers that it can be very tedious to have some of these apps running, because if you actually want to monitor things, then you would have to go back and play through or read through conversations at a later point in time. And I know a lot of families are very, very busy, so you may not necessarily have the time for that. So there are benefits, but there are also drawbacks to using some of these materials for sure. So questions to ask when troubleshooting common problems online. Talking about the online platforms that are being used and communicating in advance is super important. One of the good questions to ask, and going back to that risk slide, thinking about the different kinds of platforms that are being used, are how are people using them? So is it a live chat? Is it comments? Is your camera on? And also, is it direct messaging? What's the purpose of this platform? Is it a dating website? Is it a gaming website? What is it used for? And then who's engaging? Are they people that you know in real life, colleagues from your school, peers from your school? Are they online friends only? Are they social media people? And it's really important to make that distinction too. I've worked with a number of people over time who have got themselves into a little bit of trouble for over messaging social media stars or icons, for commenting too much, thinking that their relationships might be different than what they might be. Again, when we talk to teens in a future session, Katie's going to go through some great information around acquaintances versus friendships, but that can be an issue in some situations. And also not just who is engaging, but how many people are engaging. So again, thinking back to the slide that Katie presented on a few slides back, understanding how many people are online is really, really important, especially around peer pressure. So if you're online and somebody is encouraging you to do something inappropriate, if there's 20 people in that room encouraging you, it may all of a sudden seem like a better idea, even though it's probably not a good idea.
There's multiple people asking to send nudes or whatever. I'm just gonna give them a keyword. Do not do it. They can sell them and they can get money off of them. They can do whatever they want with them, and then eventually you probably get in trouble from that. Yeah.
One of the non-negotiables is never share nudes. It's not going to ever end well in any way, right? Once that information's out there, it's out there. And again, in another future session, we're going to talk about the red flags and the do's and don'ts online for teens specifically, and we'll certainly cycle back to that then. And that really ties into that question of what information is appropriate to share. Well, certainly images of yourself nude are absolutely not appropriate to share. And we also don't want to share information like our addresses, phone numbers, all those sorts of things. But having those discussions up front is imperative so that we know that everybody has the same guidelines and boundaries there in place. And then the last question is, what extra measures can we take to ensure safety in the future? So if an incident does happen, how can we make sure that doesn't happen again? We know that not allowing access to online activities is not really a sustainable reality, and it's not how life really works. We're going to be online as humans for many years to come, and so our teens need to be engaged, but they need to be engaged safely.
Okay, so keeping with the theme of safety, I'm going to talk a little bit about knowing your rights. So it's important for internet users to know what rights they have when entering an online space. Educating yourself and your adolescent on what your provincial or territorial internet safety and privacy laws are maybe helpful for just getting an understanding of that legality aspect. Also, when determining if something is reportable online, consider if the conduct violates any part of the criminal code, like harassment, assault, identity theft, because typically the same laws of in-person harassment apply to online platforms as well. It's also important to report any instances of online misconduct or harassment to your local police department. Even if you're unsure if it's reportable to the police, they will help you determine if an investigation is warranted. Cybertip.ca specifically is operated by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. It's a tip line for reporting online sexual exploitation of children, whether the user is experiencing it or believes another user is being exploited. And then Government of Canada website linked here provides multiple sources for reporting different cybercrime issues as well. Generally, online platforms, specifically social media, have privacy policies, codes of conduct, and reporting policies that allow users to report inappropriate content or behavior, harassment, and also to block other users. Most importantly, social media's privacy settings should always be used and changed to your preferences. You're able to determine how visible your online content is, who's able to contact you directly, and who can see your information. And when you are using a new online platform, these policies should at least be generally reviewed. So if you do have an issue, you know how to address it properly. A few links here for viewers to access after the presentation, but specifically the second one listed, Internet Safety for Teens with ASD, and also the last one listed, Planning and Prevention for Adolescents with ASD, may be of particular interest. Both provide information surrounding risks, tips, and provide additional resources, again, for teens and caregivers.
Right. Awesome. And then one resource that I don't see there, but I know, Nicole, you have some experience working directly with that we should probably just, reiterate is always like the Kids Help phone line, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. So actually across Canada, if you text 686868, just the word home, you can connect with a crisis responder, and that's 24/7. So if you are in need of crisis support, that is always there.
So the last thing that we wanted to mention before we wind down is that we do have a few future sessions. So I've mentioned a couple of them in the throughout the presentation. So Katie and Nicole are back with us for the other 3 remaining sessions. And most specifically, the next step would be, again, for parents or caregivers, talking about how to actually execute some of these questions that we've kind of thrown at you today. So how do you actually create that safety contract? How do we actually upkeep safety now that we've thought about the bigger underlying issues? And then sessions 3 and 4, those are geared at the adolescent. So we're going to be talking about how to navigate through things online. What are the do's? What are the don'ts? And then how to think about friends, how to practice positive behavior, common issues that individuals may find themselves in online that are not so positive, and how to work through some of those. Okay, and I think that's it. We've got a reference slide here for you if in case you're looking to get any more information. And then my contact, of course. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you on a future session. Hi, everybody. So Nicole and I are here now to answer any questions that you may have had over the course of the last 20 or so minutes listening to us in our pre-recorded webinar. So a couple of questions that came through. One was in relation to TikTok, and I think Nicole was going to address that. The question was, how does that fit on the scale of safety related activities? Is it riskier? Is it safer? And we actually don't have it on there, which we really definitely should have, because that's one that a lot of adolescents and young adults use as well, right? So Nicole's going to take that one for us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we definitely should have included that. So thank you for asking this question. I would probably kind of place that along the lines of where Instagram is, just because from my experience with it, they do have really great privacy policies and just security settings. So you can make your profile private, only share with your friends or followers, and you can approve those. But I do know that they also have like TikTok live streams, so you can't always really control what somebody may be posting in that manner. So there's always that risk that comes with not being able to control what you may be seeing posted by others, but there is that ability to control your own information, which I think is really good.
Yeah, I think the more live the platform, the potential increased risk that it has. But there's other ways to certainly manage risk. So like we were talking earlier, making sure that your adolescent or young adult has the opportunity to know what they can do to disengage and how they can safely cope if it feels like it's getting too much online is a really good thing. And then another thing I want to add that a client told me they were doing recently that I thought was really, really cool was, so she's been going on I think she's been on Twitch lately. And so she actually has, when she's on Twitch, she has a moderator who's her best friend. So when she's sharing experiences and gaming and she's drawing on Twitch, she's got a friend who is moderating things for her. And I thought that was a really interesting, unique way to manage some risk online as well. So that if someone was saying something, then instead of interrupting what she's doing and she's got a bunch of people watching, instead of her having to stop and be like, okay, I'm going to deal with this now, she's got a good friend there who's going to kind of vet the comments, vet the people engaging with her material and content. So lots of different interesting and creative ways to manage risk as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I think there's one more question. Just try and pull it back up here. Okay, so yeah, so it was just, what was the name of the app, I think, right? So I think Katie mentioned it twice, so hopefully you caught it on the second time. Otherwise, these were, I think it's slide 9. I want to say, so slide 9 has a bunch of the other ones. And as we mentioned, the biggest thing is making sure that it's compatible. So the one issue is if someone has an iPhone, but they're usually using Windows on their computers, then you just want to check on those pieces and then also think about the finances in regard to that as well.
Yeah. For the app that was mentioned, I believe it was Omegle, just to give you that piece of information to answer that question. And yeah, good. Katie kind of gave the rundown on what that is like.
So let's see, any more questions coming through? You've got a couple minutes to ask questions. And then otherwise, we've got one question here, which is, what do I do if I think my teen is engaging in unsafe behavior online? So how do you deal with that? So let me just see if there's any other questions as well, and then we'll dig into that one. Okay, I'm not seeing any more come through. So what do you do if your teen's engaging with some unsafe behavior online? Nicole, any thoughts initially on how to address that?
I think that's definitely case-by-case basis, just based on your relationship with your child. I think it would be great to have that open conversation about what safety may look like, try and have that open conversation of what their experience is online and what they may think positive and negative interactions may look like, and be able to clarify that and explain why the level of safety is so important. But yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, totally. So I think it's just like addressing it kind of like and asking like, you know, what's going on online? Here's what I'm kind of worried about, and just kind of in creating that initial communication. If you tune into webinar 2, there's definitely going to be a lot of opportunity there to talk about creating that safe space to share. And then the contracts, I think, will help get at that as well. Just looking at the comments now. So someone's saying thank you, and particularly to Katie, letting her know that she did a great job. So I'm going to make sure to pass along that message to her. We love working with her, and she has great insight in the upcoming webinars as well. Next question is, when you post on Instagram, can it be seen by public based on tag words such as hashtag Toronto, for example?
That is a really great question. I think hashtags like that always create some type of just not misunderstanding, but like you never know where it may pop up. My belief is that if you do have a private account, that won't show on public forums like the Explore pages or anything like that. But just to be sure, that may be something to look into the privacy policy, for example. And there's even some questions for Facebook posting. Again, like you might want to just look into that privacy policy, see where their security measures lie, just to be sure. Because I could say one thing and then it couldn't necessarily totally match up. So definitely always doing your research to make sure that online safety aspect is there, just to feel more secure.
Yeah. And I think that that's an important piece too, Nicole mentioning that like it's always evolving as well, right? So what might be the current privacy setting may not be the privacy setting in a week or a month. So it's good to always be regularly checking in on privacy settings and what that means for you. But my understanding is the same as Nicole said. If it is a private account, that as of right now, then it wouldn't be public if you posted something that was private. But different And that was what I would say for Facebook. For Instagram, for Instagram. For Facebook, I'm a little less certain. So you want to probably toggle around a bit in there and double check. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. Nicole, am I missing any?
Do you know the name of the screen time app that you had mentioned?
Was that, I'm not sure if that was the one that Nicole mentioned, or was that the one of some of them from slide 9?
I believe just what Katie was saying, that she has a screen time app that monitors her usage. I'm not too sure on the name of that. I would assume that there are several. And yeah, probably kind of goes along with your online safety apps.
Yeah, we can go back and watch it and then try to get the name, or ask Katie directly, and then share it in the next webinar, which is 2 weeks from now. I think that's a good time to probably wind down and say that, just say thank you for tuning in today to this important presentation. And this webinar is available on demand. So if you wanted to watch it again, go for it. And then also, Ola has created all the handouts for you, and they're all available. And the safety contracts, even though we're digging more into them next time, if you want to have a look at them, or adapt them on your own, if you can't tune in next time or watch the next one, then that's a great way to take everything that we talked about today one step further. And then a reminder, our final 2 webinars are geared at the adolescent themselves. So that's kind of cool to have your teen tune into those, and I think they're gonna be really engaging and fun. So we hope to see you again, if not live, then definitely on demand. And thank you, Autism Ontario and Ola, for having us today again.